Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast YouTube channel, the place where episodes are untouched and uncut. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favorite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, hit that like button and subscribe. Please enjoy the show. Hello, podsters or podderoonies, if you prefer. We are back again as always. It's great for you guys to continue to download the podcast. Very much appreciate it. This episode, as Argylle is out, the new Matthew Vaughn film. So we're naturally talking about Matthew Vaughn films. And of course, I'm joined by two regular guests at this point, Georgia and John from the Comfort Films podcast. How are you guys? It's great to have you back
great, on. Martin. Thanks for having us back. We always love to come talk to you.
Yeah, it's always a good time.
Good. So tell us about your podcast and where can we find you?
So we are Comfort Films podcast. We pretty much talk about things that we love to rewatch over and over.
Yeah, sometimes they're comfortable, sometimes they're not.
Yeah, sometimes they're distinctly uncomfortable, but not for us because we love them. But that's why you'll see weird stuff in there, like Goodfellas. But, you know, we all have our own definition of comfort. And we're available pretty much on any platform that you would normally find a podcast on. Most people listen on Apple or Spotify, or come straight to our website, comfortfilmspodcast.com.
You can also visit us, of course, on Instagram, and we have a very poor TikTok account if you would like to poke fun at that. And we're on Twitter.
Okay.
So, yes. Or X, I should say.
No, just Twitter.
No, just Twitter. See, I'm very...
You said a bad word, John.
It is X, but I refuse.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying my hand at TikTok as well. It's kind of fun, but yeah, that's cool.
You can call it.
Right, Matthew Vaughn then has a new movie out, Argylle. It's an interesting one. Again, he's kind of riffing on the spy genre again. Like, the trailer looks very interesting, starring, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Henry Cavill, and Henry Cavill kind of plays this fictional character, spy James Bond, Jason Bourne character. And Bryce Dallas Howard is like the author, of this Henry Cavill character. So yeah, that's an interesting concept. And again, I feel like maybe Vaughn is trying to really freshen up the spy genre as much as he can. I don't know about you guys, but like the last two outputs of Vaughn movies with his Kingsman films have been a bit disappointing. Like, I loved the first film, and we'll certainly talk about that with your pick. But the second film, I did not like at all, really. And then The King's Man was okay. So I feel like he has lost his way a little bit, for me, down his own kind of franchise that he's created with Mark Miller and kind of taken it on his own shoulders now. So I'm a bit skeptical about Argylle, I must be honest, but yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think your assessment of how the Kingsman films grew out of the first one is fairly on par with what I think. The Golden Circle was okay. I thought that it just didn't exactly capture the spirit of the first movie, which I quite love, and we'll discuss that in great detail later. But I did kind of love that people leaned into the Pedro Pascal, Burt Reynolds thing, because every time I would see Pedro Pascal on Game of Thrones, all I could think about was Burt Reynolds. So that worked for me, but a lot of other things were kind of cheesy and not in a good way. I did like The King's Man quite a bit. I didn't think it was like the best movie ever or something, but it was good enough for me to enjoy. Ray Fiennes is pretty great. So, I mean, honestly, if he was in anything, I'd probably at least think it was okay. And I thought it was an interesting idea to go back and kind of do a prequel and see how this came about. But they didn't really capture that spirit of the first Kingsman movie. And Argylle, I am trying to be open and see where we go with it. I think Henry Cavill is good casting for this. He's a great action guy and pretty smart in a lot of ways with like genre type fiction and film, as we see from some of his other work. Um, and I do think it's kind of a fun concept with this author, interacting with characters. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna watch it regardless.
Yeah.
But I really hope that Vaughn kind of leans into what he's really good at and kind of maybe avoids some of the cheese factor that sometimes creeps in.
Yeah. It's, with Argylle, I just had to look it up, and I just looked at it and I already forgot the title. Isn't that good?
The funny thing is, like,
I got it. Okay.
I haven't seen a trailer for this for months, and that's a little bit weird to me. I've seen posters popping up, but I don't feel like they're pushing it as much, which is a little bad too. That's a little scary.
Well, I've been to the movies a little more recently than you, and I have seen it.
Okay, good.
The past couple times I went. It reminds me of, and again, I had to look up the name just now, The Lost City that came out in 2022 with Sandra Bullock. And again, we have a writer, and we have, this hero, and then we have, the person that she gets with who is not exactly a hero.
Well, it's like Romancing the Stone, kind of, right? It's like that. Going all the way back to that movie that probably nobody remembers because they're not old enough.
Yeah, but that movie's so good.
It is good.
I remember it.
Right? It's Michael Douglas. I mean, that was out of nowhere. I never thought Michael Douglas could be like some kind of rugged, kind of, world-weary adventurer, but he was really strong in it. And I do feel like everything kind of grows out of that. And again, Romancing the Stone, all about Joan Wilder writing her books, Kathleen Turner. So I feel like we're kind of on this continuum. And when I see Argylle, I'm like, oh, okay. So yes, just like you, I'm going Romancing the Stone. I'm going The Lost City. And I'm like, here we are. And then I feel that we've mixed it up with Bullet Train, just because we see that fight scene on the train with Sam Rockwell. Now, you've got really talented people in this, so that would attract me to go see it. I mean, Sam Rockwell, you never know what he's going to pull out. I don't think I've ever seen a Sam Rockwell performance that you don't feel is 100% or is different in some way. He is a fearless performer. He's not afraid to be ugly if he needs to be. And he's also someone that really fully throws himself into the role. And with the physicality, with the action, just what we see in the trailer, I feel like we're in for something good. Now, the turn of Argylle, I guess it's a cat, if I'm understanding it right. Is that the animal in that, if I remember correctly?
I don't know.
I think it's a cat.
Isn't it Henry Cavill's character? I think
we keep seeing a cat, and I keep feeling like we're gonna
got a cat.
It's like I feel like there's going to be a turn with a cat. I don't, unless I was on a mental journey at that point. But
Henry Cavill's name is Argylle.
So, then that would do it.
He's like holding this cat,
unless he transforms during the film.
Maybe
that'd be a twist.
Bit of a rewrite. I don't like Henry Cavill anymore. I want the cat to be the spy, the secret spy.
It's the big move. Well, they show in the trailer there's this big reveal, and they don't show us who it is. They're like, oh my gosh, and we don't see it. So that makes me think that there's a hidden twist. Henry Cavill, I think about The Man from U.N.C.L.E. The Guy Ritchie film. And I think about Mission Impossible. So it's like, okay, this is right in the wheelhouse. Well, Superman. I love Man of Steel, by the way.
Well, Matthew Vaughn and Guy Ritchie are like really paddling in the same pool, so that makes sense.
It's, I'm in. I don't know where we're headed, but I'm in. I like Bryce Dallas Howard a lot.
Yeah.
Always great. And
she's usually good.
Yeah, very strong. So we've got, some strong performers. In terms of the other Matthew Vaughn films, The King's Man, I did enjoy. I was there for that. Yeah, and I liked the movie, but I agree. It didn't feel like it necessarily connected with the first film with Kingsman: The Secret Service. I felt like, okay, this is cool, and I do like it, but this feels different. With the Golden Circle, that's one I always go back to because every time
Really?
I see a trailer, I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. We're bringing in Jeff Bridges. We've got Pedro Pascal again, Burt Reynolds. I'm like, all right, Burt Reynolds, who was actually up for James Bond,
That's
which is
true.
Was he?
crazy. Honest to God.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have all these guys coming into the franchise, and we'll, go over that later because in Kingsman: The Secret Service, again, we'll go into it later. But the Golden Circle is one I always go back to. I'm a huge Elton John fan. I know you're an Elton John
yeah.
fan too. So it's like, it's very exciting that he's in it. I also love, this crazy idea that his torture is to just play these hits over and over again. That's like the first. Hey, I mean, all these beats are great. Julianne Moore, the evil vegan. The thing, and it's a spoiler alert, the thing that I don't like about the Golden Circle, where I feel like, why, is you killed Merlin. You can't kill Mark Strong. He is like the heart.
Yeah. And also they kill, who's the girl character? I can't remember her name now. Roxy, is it? Right at the start of that film as well. I'm like, oh, that's such a great character they could have played on, with her relationship to Eggsy, but they just kill her straight away with like a missile strike. I'm like, oh, that's really disappointing.
Well,
It's
I mean,
sad.
especially after they built her up in
Yeah.
the first movie
Just
so
thrown
much,
away.
and yeah, I don't understand the logic of that, really.
No, because it was subverting expectations was the whole thing, is that
Yeah.
we've got, a female character that's tougher than all these guys. Usually when we see these spy films, it's a male-dominated franchise. We have James Bond. What's it all about?
Well, even
Gotta
bringing...
sleep with all the women. Oh, he's great. He's a great alcoholic.
But
Yay,
even
and he
bringing-
kills people.
even
An
bringing-
alcoholic murderer.
Even bringing a woman into the latest James Bond movie was like so controversial.
Oh my God!
That everybody was like losing their shit over it. And
a couple, Anna de Armas too. Don't forget that. So it was like we had the new 007, and we had Anna de Armas.
But the new 007, like people being a woman, like people were just crapping themselves, like they couldn't deal with it. So, for this movie to kind of set it up, like, yeah, we got a woman, and turns out she's like got more balls than all these dudes combined, and then she's just offed. It's a waste. It feels like a waste.
Yeah,
and she shoots the dog, which I don't know. I hate that part, but
we'll get there.
We'll get there. But it shows that she's got more steel, than the other guy, than Eggsy. So, but I don't know. I do really enjoy Matthew Vaughn's work. I mean, we go back, Layer Cake. Georgia and I talked about it. Georgia's like, it's more of a Guy Ritchie movie, and of course, it's because
that's why we didn't pick it. But Layer Cake was really high on our list.
Yeah,
and that's why Daniel Craig got Bond.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I went with Kick-Ass then because you guys picked his best film, Kingsman: Secret Service. I was like, damn it! What am I going to pick? I really need to change the rules. I need to go first sometimes. But yeah, so this was a really tough choice for me. So I had Layer Cake, as you said, basically Daniel Craig's audition to be Bond, Stardust, and this one, Kick-Ass. And I hadn't seen Stardust before, and it looked really intriguing. And the more I looked at that film and researched it, and the more reviews I read, The Princess Bride kept coming up, and I was like, I don't know. Is it really going to live up to The Princess Bride? I'm not sure, because that is such a classic film. I love that film a lot. And then when I watched the trailer, Ricky Gervais is in it, so I was like, no, hard pass for that one.
We actually almost watched Stardust as well to think about it, but I think we kind of were just like, look, we get to pick first. Let's just pick Kingsman because we're not stupid.
Yeah.
Although we did let you have the thing when we came on your drunk episode, so...
Fair play. But yeah, then Layer Cake, I was very, very tempted to pick Layer Cake. I love Daniel Craig. I hadn't watched that for a long, long time. But again, as you kind of said, it feels like more of a Guy Ritchie film. I feel like it was just, I mean, when I watched it for the first time, I had kind of mixed reactions. It's a very, great proper British gangster film. It was very complicated, a lot of things going on. I don't think I fully understood it with everything that's going on. So yeah, and I feel like with that one as well, Matthew Vaughn, it was kind of like his tester film, like because he was basically producer on a lot of Guy Ritchie films like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. He helped make that with Guy Ritchie, so it was kind of like his audition film that he could make a movie, you know. So I nearly picked that, but I ultimately went with Kick Ass because it's just really entertaining and really funny, very like crass and dark. And it's interesting as well. He teamed up with Mark Miller, and they were making this film before Mark Miller had actually finished the comic books. So, they were working out how it should end in the film as well as the comic book kind of at the same time, which was really interesting. And I just love how this film just kind of turns everything on its head in terms of what we think about superhero films even today. So, I mean, this is quite old now, like 14 years old, and it feels so fresh still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is way before Deadpool. Not the comics, but in films, so yeah, it's really interesting with that very dark humor to it. So, so what happens in Kick-Ass? Well, going to IMDb, Dave Lazowski is an unnoticed high school student and comic book fan who one day decides to become a superhero, even though he has no powers, training, or meaningful reason to do so. So, initial reactions then, guys. What did you make of Kick-Ass?
Kick-Ass was really great. I mean, there's so much in there. There are so many good actors. I mean, it's like there's a list when thinking about the favorite character. It just was a very long list. It is different in terms of what you expect with a superhero movie because it is crass. A lot of people said it was like a comic book film met Superbad. Of course, that was, I mean, we have McLovin in the film, of course, who is fantastic. I mean, the one thing that I would say, it shows its age a little bit with some of, these jokes that they have about our main character being gay. I mean, it kind of fell flat for me. It felt like something we would see like in a Blake Edwards film, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like we kept going over that ground. So for me, it was like, that was the one thing that I was like, come
But
on.
that kind of feels like Superbad too, actually. I think you make a really good point. Like, because it's this kind of teen comedy aspect that they've kind of melded in to the superhero, kind of subverting superhero movie thing. In a way, he's kind of doing what he later does more successfully, in my opinion, on The Kingsman, with taking like a very established genre and playing with it and, adding and subtracting and just kind of twisting kind of what he's doing to keep you guessing. And I think that's pretty well done.
Yeah, you have no idea where you're headed in Kick-Ass. I mean, of course, I mean, the thing that always comes to mind for me first, and I think I'm probably jumping ahead a little, it's my favorite scene is our introduction to Big Daddy and Hit Girl. It's like, this is a father and daughter, and it's like he just shoots her, and, then they have this whole, like, discussion about, I need to shoot you 2 more times, and then we'll go get ice cream and go bowling. I mean,
good call, baby doll.
it's so good. Like, the Nicolas Cage performance is incredible because it's so earnest. And that's what I like so much about what he does in this film. There are a lot of people that really come in and ground it. And Nicolas Cage, you usually think about a more of a far-flung performance, and the things that he has to do are out there, especially when you think about, real life parenting. But he is incredible in that he just feels completely confident in what he thinks his daughter should be doing. He is focused, and he does love her. It's dysfunctional, but it's a happy family.
It is.
Yeah. She doesn't need to go to school. It's fine. Yeah.
You could say that again.
She knows her guns. She knows her knives. I mean, that's really the most important thing. Can you kill someone? That's
as quickly as possible.
It's every parent's dream. It's what they hope for. Yeah.
Screw school. Right. Directing then. I love how the film subverts the superhero like origin tale in the direction here with Kick-Ass. The character, he gets like a scuba diving costume that he thinks looks cool. It doesn't. His training with a tire looks a tad stupid. Then when you get like the classic Spider-Man scene on the rooftop where Kick-Ass is like preparing to jump the gap, it's very dramatic. Then he just pulls out of it right away at the last minute, and is like, hell no. Then when he like sees those carjackers, he's like, yes, this is my moment. Like the direction is super dramatic when he reveals himself, when he reveals his costume, but the carjackers just laugh at him. Then when like the fight starts, Kick-Ass is all over the place and gets stabbed pretty quickly, then gets like spiraled by a car. Yep. So the film is like constantly reminding you that this world is pretty real, and yet this is his real like origin tale for Kick-Ass, the character, his superhero persona. Like later it's revealed that he has loads of like metal plates in his body like Wolverine and can't feel much pain. So I love how the film kind of riffs on superhero films to create Kick-Ass's origin in that way. Even though like you think he's being an idiot, he's actually accidentally become a superhero.
Yeah, I like that too, because the whole point to start with is, I don't have any special powers. There's nothing special about me. I'm just a regular teenager. But then, through trying to be a superhero, he actually becomes a superhero. He fails miserably, but the consequences of that act kind of turn him into somewhat indestructible kind of a force. And I think that really works. It's really funny, and it's good that this is kind of just a regular kid, because that does make him more relatable. And he just wants to be special. He wants to do something special, and I think we can all kind of relate to that, especially if you're kind of a nerdy teenager. And then of course he finds that there's other people who are doing the same thing. So Kick-Ass kind of is Spider-Man-esque, in the way he develops, and then he kind of hooks in with Batman, and Batman's very, very small, young, badass child.
Yeah, they're not really big subtle at all with what Big Daddy is trying to look like.
No, not even close. I think that's good, though. It works.
Yeah,
and then, Nicolas Cage is doing the voice, too, and, when he's just playing MacReady, just the regular guy MacReady, he's different. He's kind of timid and stuff, and it feels like putting on the costume and like the more Adam West voice and persona kind of enables him to do what he needs to do to fight crime. I think that's pretty smart, really pretty well done.
Well, and I think there's a parody there too, because a lot of people really got on the Christian Bale voice when he was Batman, because it was it was such a departure from his regular voice.
I never understood that, because I really like that. I was like, it makes sense.
I do too. But everybody gave a lot of static for that. I mean, the one that I found to be the most jarring, of course, was Bane. And not many people said that much about it. Like, like Tom Hardy is a tough dude. He's massive in that. And then you hear that voice. I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, he knows what he's doing. He knows.
No, he does. I mean, that's... Well, Tom Hardy doesn't have like this really deep, like resonant voice or anything anyway. Like, even though he is tough, he kind of has like a higher pitched voice generally. But then like, whatever he was doing with Bane was a little beyond my comprehension. I don't know. It did.
I quite liked it. Yeah.
Well, he sounded like, at the time we were in like a Shakespeare troupe, like a community Shakespeare
Okay.
troupe. And our like main guy that kind of ran the place had worked at the Globe and like was this classically trained kind of Shakespearean actor, and he was playing Claudius in Hamlet and would pretty much sounded exactly like Bane. So all that I kept hearing when we would hear
no.
Bane was like this guy Mel doing this, like, you know, the Claudius prayer saying or something. And everyone else in the troupe felt the same way, because we actually went to see Batman together, and everybody was like, does he sound just like Mel, or is it just Bane? It's kind of hilarious.
Well, the most hilarious thing, this is just about, you know, the Hamlet production. He's out there doing this prayer scene, and he has this sword that he just stabs into the ground dramatically. Well, he actually stabbed through his cape into the ground
once.
Yeah. So when he tried to walk away, he couldn't.
He kept getting caught. It was a good night.
It was very funny. Very funny. Yeah, one of those things you remember. But it's, I mean, you bring up a great point, Martin, about how there is a reality to it. Like, there is a lot of humor in Kick-Ass, but things come back very hard. I mean, when we have the torture scene where Big Daddy ultimately dies, I mean, that's horrific. You know, this kind of breaks one of my rules in film, which is you cannot kill Nicolas Cage. If Nicolas Cage dies in the film, I'm out. I do have to say Leaving Las Vegas is brilliant. I mean, he's got a lot of amazing performances, but generally speaking, okay, it's like if he is our hero and he goes down, I'm out. And it really hit me in this movie when he died.
Well, he has to go out in this for the character development of Hit Girl.
Makes sense.
And
makes
she's
sense.
kind of, you know, the real hero of that situation, I guess.
Well, she's the
I
best.
mean, really, maybe the real hero of the movie overall, arguably.
There's no argument.
There's no Kick-Ass without Hit Girl.
No.
At all.
I mean, there is an argument to say that like Kick-Ass is very much just along for the ride. He's just stuck in the middle of this war, basically, between Big Daddy and Nico and the, you know, Frank DeMarco and his men. I love the first proper fight scene with Kick-Ass and these like muggers in the street, and I love how Kick-Ass looks again quite stupid, failing to save a cat. And these guys like running down the street chasing someone like they're all like freight trains going at 100 miles an hour. Then the fight carries on with that style for both characters. Like the muggers' punches and kicks are mainly really tight in, close up on them to make, you know, the hits look quite painful, while Kick-Ass is shot mainly with wide shots to make him look a tad silly still. But you still want him to win the fight, even though you are laughing at him a little bit as Kick-Ass. So I think the film definitely like treads a fine line of like, you know, you want him to succeed, but at the same time, like the guy, he's a bit stupid. Like, what you doing, man? You're completely out of your depth.
Yeah, well, I mean, you almost are like, you know, in a way, you kind of want to protect this kid because he has no self-protection mechanism or something. He just keeps like running into the fray completely unprepared. I mean, you know, you're right. He can't even save this cat. He's up on the billboard. And Mr.
You're like,
Bitey,
if he can't save the cat, there's no way he's gonna beat these dudes up.
Yeah, Mr. Bitey like takes him out. Like, yeah, but then he, you know, ends up in this fight. And I do like the use of kind of social media to kind of blow up his presence, you know, that is used in Spider-Man movies as well a lot of times, but I think it's smart. You're tying him back to Spider-Man again.
Yeah.
And you know, just generally the action scenes, and I don't know, I think that's where Matthew Vaughn really shines. All the time is with action scenes. Like, he's just really good, and this is not easy to do. So this is where I want to give him a lot of credit. He does it without turning it into this like frenetic editing pace where you can't even tell what's going on. Like, he really smartly uses camera movement to capture the action and to draw the eye, rather than depending on quick cuts and things like that. because you know, I'll see action movies. I really like action movies, but a lot of times they're edited to the point where I can't enjoy them because I don't even know what's going
Mm,
on, you know, or they're lit
yeah,
poorly. These scenes are always lit well. You can see what's going on. You know,
yeah,
he wants you to see what's happening. He doesn't want to kind of confuse you into
mm,
thinking that, you know, everything's fast. He wants it to be fast. And I think he does a great job with that in both of these films. But in Kick Ass, the hit girl stuff, pretty much anytime she's fighting, I'm totally captivated by that scene.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree because I think, as you say, I mean, there are occasions where like it is kind of cut fast, but I'm with you. Like you're never really lost in the action. You know, and the I think the shots are composed so well, um, and you know exactly what's going on at all times. And he's great at like mixing it up and giving each action scene a unique feel to it. And like with a lot of action films today, like the good ones, I would say the technique these days with like John Wick stuff and Gareth Edwards, no, Gareth Evans, sorry, movies is that you use like big wide lenses and you get the camera right in close so you can see like the actors doing their thing so you know it's like not fake and they're not using stunt doubles. That's all great. Like I love that style, but there's no reason why you can't like have great action films like this still, where it is kind of really fast with fast cuts and you know I think Matthew Vaughn is a great advocate for I wouldn't say an old fashioned style of directing, but it's still as satisfying as like the John Wick stuff and Gareth Evans stuff. Um, for example, like the last action scene I love, where Hit Girl uses her like her little girl looks to her advantage to take out like Jason Fleming and co. Plus, I love the Ennio Morricone music from A Few Dollars More. That was great. Love
Yeah.
that. Then again, you see like amazing action with Hit Girl in the hallway with like added style that goes into more unrealistic comic book style where she like reloads her guns in midair. I think at this point it's very much earned to show that. Then I liked that Hit Girl doesn't get her own way, where she runs out of ammo and is in a tight spot. And I loved how like Vaughn adds some great humor with the stupid goons like trying to get that guy to go out with a machine gun. He, like lets off all his ammo. Is like, huh? And they get stabbed. Then I love how Kick-Ass gets a cool hero moment with him strapped to like a jetpack with a minigun, taking out the rest of the men. Then you get like a classic double fight between Hit Girl and DeMarco where it's quite brutal, and then you have like Kick-Ass versus Red Mist, and it looks quite goofy. And I love how they both somehow take out each other at the same time. And I love how like Kick-Ass never like improves his fighting skills, which other filmmakers would probably put in like a fight montage in there. No, they stay true to the character and the comedy of the film. So I kind of like the fact that they don't go into that temptation of like, oh, let's make Kick-Ass look really cool, just like Hit Girl. Like, no, let's stick to his character.
I mean, speaking to like the classic nature of the filming, what I would say the biggest thing for me that comes through with Matthew Vaughn as a director is confidence. And that
Oh yeah.
confidence really comes through in these fight scenes where they don't rely on any tricks. He,
Mm.
fully believes in his actors. And Chloe Grace Moretz did all this acrobatics training. It's incredible. I mean, we see the same thing later in Kingsman with Gazelle, in her work. These
Yeah.
people are really doing the work. So this is like a ballet. And really, what the camera's trying to do is just capture it. It doesn't need to add anything to it. It doesn't need to enhance it. That what's center stage is the performer. And seeing that is wonderful. It's wonderful to see that kind of confidence in a performer. It's wonderful to see that type of confidence in a director. And I feel that that's really what the strength of this is. And with Hit Girl, she is the strongest character in the film. She is the toughest.
Yeah.
And I love the music cue, like you talked about. And I also love the fact that she does like a Clint Eastwood impression. You know, it's like the way she holds her mouth and the way she looks. And I mean, they give her, you know, the foulest lines to say, which
Yeah.
every time makes me laugh. You know, I'm not going to lie. I mean, that's like, again, a throwback, you know, to like something you would see in like the 70s, like Bad News Bears or one of those type of films, where even in the 80s, you know, you would have these sweet-faced kids saying the most horrible stuff, and it would get you maximum laughter. The fact that she also is able to play all of these emotions, which, you know, she was how old when she did this? 10?
10.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Like, you have a
So
whole
good.
world. That's incredible.
That's an old soul kid right there. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, she is just like a middle-aged woman in like a 10-year-old body or something. Because like, she's just really, really wise beyond her years. That kid.
Yeah.
She's great. And I also like with the jetpack when we have Kick-Ass coming in to save the day, because again, I feel that Matthew Vaughn, you know, you always know what his influences are. When I see a jetpack, the first thing that I think about is James Bond. Every time.
Thunderball.
Yes. So it's like, but James Bond, you know, didn't have twin Gatling guns on it. So that was his upgrade to take it even further. And I love that. You know, it's always with Matthew Vaughn, he'll go back to something that he loves and he'll say, what can I do to top this? What can I do to go even further? And he doesn't disappoint. I mean, Mark Strong as a mob boss, you know, Frank D'Amico. I mean, this is a fantastic character. Mark Strong, wonderful, so versatile.
Yeah.
They have him with Michael Rispoli as, you know, as Big Joe. And the two of them are a fantastic comedy duo. This is something that you could see on The Sopranos. Rispoli was on The Sopranos. Rispoli also was in Death to Smoochie, where he played a markedly different character than he does in this. So it's just like he has a lot that he can give. So when you put these two performers together, it makes it so believable. I believe the camaraderie. And Rispoli does a wonderful job of giving that power, you know, to Mark Strong in every scene. Like, you can really feel that he looks at Mark Strong like he's the boss, and I feel that it empowers Mark Strong to really treat him as the subordinate. They push each other as far as they can go in this kind of odd couple mix, you know?
Well, and then you have, you know, D'Amico's son is Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who, you know, is just a brilliant stroke of casting, because this is like, you know, the nerdy teenager who's, you know, arguably even more, you know, out of touch than Aaron Taylor Johnson and the Clark Duke Evan Peters friend combo. You know, like, he can't even, you know, Chris D'Amico can't even have friends. You know, whenever, you know, he tries to approach him at the beginning, he's like, get away from him, you know. So, you know, he's like this isolated, nerdy kid who loves comic books and stuff. And having that juxtaposed with his dad being like this, you know, hard ass mob boss is super great thinking, because it just, the comedy kind of writes itself there.
I love his car as well, because it makes no sense. It's like, oh, and check this out. Flicks the switch and Mist comes, because he's called Red Mist. Okay? Sure.
Well, he looks like Robin. That's the part I love. He's supposed to be this independent guy, and he looks like a sidekick. How many people dress up as the sidekick?
Well, I mean, he even says, I could be your sidekick to Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
I know he's trying to like draw him in a bit at that point, so I don't know if that's meant to be true or tongue-in-cheek, but like, he says like, yeah, you know, I was thinking I could be your sidekick.
Robin,
it's like, you want to be my sidekick?
Well, there's like, definitely a sense of he's being genuine there as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
Well, I can't believe it. If like he looks like Robin, then he turns in Batman. Let's just think about that quickly. Well, Robin leads to the death of Batman.
Because he's so desperate to have acceptance from his father, you know.
Yeah.
And this is like the only method he can use is like his own skill in knowing comic books and saying like, oh, I recognize this, I understand this. This is where I can make my dad really love me, for helping him.
So favorite scene for me, we mentioned it briefly already, but I love the warehouse action where Hit Girl attempts to save her dad and kick ass. It's all because of the lighting for me. Like, all the light comes from Hit Girl's gunshots, gun flashes, because she's firing so much. Like, the cutting keeps the pace up. It's like we're watching like a bunch of still images in quick succession, ironically. But I love how that's all mixed in with Hit Girl's like POV, with like the night vision goggles as she's like taking people out too, and like when Big Daddy gets set alight and is slowly burning alive, you get a bit of like artificial light in there, but the scene changes pace quickly with Hit Girl using like a strobe light to distract the goons, and she looked amazing in slow mo in the end of that scene in that light. So the confidence and creativity from Matthew Vaughn to keep the action like fresh with just using light really is really impressive for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I love how this film really emulates the comic book style. I mean, we have the voiceover, that we get from Kick-Ass, then we get it from Big Daddy. It has that panels look, and what you're talking about with the gunfire, you can really just see that. You can imagine that when you're looking at the comic book, and it has like the comic book hope to it, because I mean, what happens? Hit Girl gets a new dad, and he's a cop, so he's strong and will protect her. Not that she needs anybody to protect her, but it's just like, as a parent, I'm sure that people are like, hey, okay, this is good. She has a good parent, and that's something that can carry forward, and it will hopefully, minus the psychosis of Big Daddy. He won't shoot her to go to the bowling alley.
Georgia, favorite scene for you?
Oh my gosh, this is hard because I just so many of them like flash through my head.
Yeah.
I think that probably for me it is that final kind of showdown fight, which we have talked about already quite a bit.
Okay.
I love the end where Kick-Ass comes in with this bazooka that we've been threatening to shoot forever.
What a way to die.
And just plugs D'Amico right in the chest, and he flies out the window and explodes. And it's pretty funny the way that they do that. I also will call out another scene that I really thought was kind of hilarious and brutal and disgusting, which is when the Rispoli puts the guy in the giant industrial microwave.
That is so brilliantly stupid.
It's really, really funny because, it's like they feel like they have to do something really, cool and different. And I think that's just hilarious. Like, as an
What
idea.
did you say? I can't hear you.
That you always have these, underlings who have to go and carry these things out. And they could have just done something simple where, they just, intimidate the guy into telling what they want. But instead, they're trying to do some grand gesture. And they end up, putting him in the industrial microwave, which doesn't work at all. Like, 30 seconds goes on, the guy just explodes, which is just super gross. But I just thought that was another really funny scene of, this trope of the underlings intimidating someone for info, and they just totally blow it because they're overreaching. Their reach exceeded their grasp.
Well, and then you counterpoint that with Rispoli with the live torture session that culminates in the death of Big Daddy. He is terrifying.
Yeah.
Again, it shows how strong he is as an actor, because it's like we can have that stupid moment that's funny, but we're always bringing down the hammer in this film. You can never get too comfortable.
He learned from that experience, all right? He just went back to the classics.
Yeah. Baseball bats and knuckle dusters. None of these License to Kill references.
I also like when he goes to Mark Strong. You're back on the powder.
That's a great actor. That guy.
So good.
Favorite
What a
scene for
great
you,
scene.
John?
I mean, it's the beginning. It's the Big Daddy
Right.
scene with Hit Girl. I mean,
Cool.
shooting your daughter. I mean, I remember seeing this in the movie theater, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I thought we were supposed to be on the team here with both of these people. I'm like, Nicolas Cage seems nuts. I'm like, we've got an abusive father. What is this? What did we sign up for? I'm like, maybe it's a dream sequence. Maybe it's a gag. I'm like, let's ride it out. But just his quirky humor is so firmly established in that first scene, along with their relationship. And really, that Big Daddy Hit Girl relationship for me is the heart of the film. That's the most interesting thing. While Kick Ass, I know, is the movie, it's called Kick Ass. I am so interested in Hit Girl and Big Daddy's dynamic that that is really the A story for me. And it's, again, the whole scene sets it up. We have the relationship, we have the dark humor, and we have an idea of what's in store. Because if he's preparing her, like, Sarah Connor style, there's going to be a massive showdown coming. So it also foreshadows, that something's going to happen. And you also think, okay, if this guy is training his daughter this hard when she's this young, there might be a thought in the back of his head that he's not going to be around that long.
That's really a good call out. It's interesting, like, because it does establish who they are, like, and I think it's, after you've seen the movie multiple times, it doesn't have the punch that it does the first time you see it, because the first time you see it, you're like, wait, what is this? I mean, and that's almost, that's why Vaughn had trouble getting this movie funded, in the first place, is because nobody was ready for like a 12-year-old girl who was just out here, rampaging out on these mobster guys. And to be able to make that work and to bring in like an emotional content level is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Directing score, guys, what are you going for?
Is this what we gave?
This is it.
Okay, yeah. Directing we rated really high on this movie because I think I think that, directing wise, that's what makes this movie, I don't know, this seems high to me, but
take a look. This is our other page.
Oh, no.
So then they got switched.
Maybe, yeah.
All right, I switched the pages, guys. I blew it. Okay.
It's okay. I still think it's pretty high.
It is.
Because the directing, to me, is what really makes this movie work. It's, the Matthew Vaughn style. It's, the commitment to his vision that he had. So we're going to give that an 8.7.
Nice. Yeah, I really love the directing here as well. And I kind of love the fact that it's very much, I feel like Matthew Vaughn still has a lot more to give. Like when you look at his later films like Kingsman feels like a perfectly directed like action film. Whereas this, I feel like he's still kind of learning his trade a little bit, doing a lot of like really different stuff. And there's some roughness there, which kind of really works for kind of the rough nature of the language that they use sometimes. So yeah, I really enjoy it as well. This is tough. I'll go 8.8, I think. Screenplay, then. I love the opening scenes of this film where, like, Dave, I can't say his second name, Dave, is doing a lot of, like, Lazowski, yeah. Is doing a lot of, like, voiceover about why superheroes don't exist and what his school life is like. And all that stuff is great, but it's all done with, like, a great pop to it. But my overwhelming thought was like, my God, this guy is a horny teenager. That shot of the teacher with a top off, you're like, wow, that's a lot. So like moving forward in this film, Matthew Vaughn is going to push the boundaries of what we normally see in a superhero film. Also, death by realizing that they don't sell Count Dracula anymore is fairly understandable for his mum.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, that's a nice quirky scene. It's so
Yeah.
unexpected again. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the two storylines where you have like Kick-Ass basically getting his ass kicked every time he puts the costume on. Certainly in the first hour, watching him, you're never convinced he's going to win a fight, and you're just worried for him that he's going to get seriously hurt. Then you have this very like loving father daughter story with Mindy and Damon McCready, played by Nicolas Cage and Chloe Grace Moretz. From their first scene where like Nicolas Cage shoots his daughter in the chest while she's wearing a bulletproof vest, you know they're superheroes pretty much. So you're eagerly awaiting their arrival in full action mode. So when Dave enters Razzle's apartment, you're like, oh god, he's going to get seriously destroyed here by these guys. And he nearly does. And you're not necessarily thinking that Hit Girl is going to show up and save the day because you're so worried for Kick-Ass getting his ass kicked. When she does arrive, it's Matthew Vaughn on top form, as we've talked about, while holding back as we don't see Big Daddy yet in full action mode. So, yeah, I do kind of like that aspect of the film.
Yeah. I mean, there's a truth to something, with Kick-Ass wanting to be a superhero. When we have, our lead character, he wants to be a superhero, and I understand that because I wanted to be a superhero. I mean, I can think of the stupidest example that I can give to you. This is a million years ago. I was watching television. I don't remember if it was VH1 or MTV. I said to my friend Chris Olds, as we watched the Lionel Richie dancing on the ceiling video, I said, watch Lionel, I can do it too. And I tried to walk up the wall and I couldn't do it.
Okay.
I fell. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like having that dream, it's just like, that's what you want. I mean, again, this is also, you're talking to the same kid that loved Olympic divers on TV and thought if I put, enough water in the bathtub, I could dive into the bathtub. That's me. I'm always dreaming. You always want to have this moment. So like I could really, really respond, to this. I could respond to this need to want to be Kick-Ass. I think that's the strongest thing to me, in the script. That's the heart of the script. I mean, my favorite story, like I said, is of Hit Girl and Big Daddy. And I think on paper it would be good, but the performances of Chloe Grace Moretz and Nicolas Cage, their teamwork is what really, brings that to the top for me.
Yeah. So would you, with Dave's character, Kick-Ass, do you feel like there's not enough balance here in the script with his story compared to Hit Girl and Big Daddy, or is it fine as it is for you?
I think that the way that they set it up is kind of that he is just not, he's more dynamic, right? He's like changing. Like Hit Girl and Big Daddy come out of the box ready to go. All of their work and prep has taken place prior to the movie starting. Yes, we're still doing some training with Hit Girl, but she's ready to rock. Whereas Dave is not, I mean, he's in the learning process, for sure. And a lot of times, like, what happens with him is that he just gets lucky, or unlucky, but it turns out to benefit him in the end anyway. And he's like a likable kid and stuff, but I do think that there's just kind of some looseness in the script, in places where that's where I would say that we have issues. It's not like overwhelming because it's certainly a very successful film, but it just isn't always as tight as I feel like it could be. And then he's also juxtaposed with the Red Mist character too, which is another kind of fake superhero who actually has even more resources at his disposal, but can't do something with that. And, arguably it would have been interesting to see Red Mist have a turn where he
Yeah.
went from, like, trying to be a bad guy to maybe trying to be a good guy in the end. And I think that his struggle between loyalty to his dad and not really wanting to be a bad guy isn't explored to the depth that it could be. It kind of
Right.
is a bit surface in a way. And I think that that's unfortunate because that's a character I think we really could have gotten interested in. And this does happen sometimes with movies, different movies where your actual protagonist, in this case Dave, ends up being a bit less interesting than some of the other
Mm.
players. And I think that's what we're running into here. Like, Dave is relatable and interesting and fun, but Hit Girl is just such an amazing character. And Red Mist is also, he has such potential to be a more interesting and fully explored character
Mm.
that I think that the balance is off a little bit for me.
Yeah, I agree because you've got Red Mist and DeMarco with that relationship, and his dad is a mob boss, loads of money, so you've got a son father relationship, Hit Girl, Big Daddy. Again, like that story is kind of based on pure revenge or revenge tale. You don't necessarily know why he's dressing up like Batman and Hit Girl, but you kind of can get away with that. But again, it's a father-daughter story, so both of those relationships are really interesting because you've got child parent, the child parent story going on. Whereas with Dave Kickass, yes, his dad dies, his mum dies, but that's very much done for a joke, which is kind of very, very dark. Uh, but even, well, sorry, it's not very dark. It's just very light, even though it's supposed to be kind of a dark moment. Um, and then with Dave, he doesn't really have a relationship. Well, he does have a little bit of a relationship with his dad, but it's quite weak compared to the other two sets of characters. So I think that's maybe where the balance isn't quite right there. That Dave's relationship is focused. Dave's relationships are focusing more with his girlfriend, pretending to be gay, which, as we've said, is a bit dated and it feels a bit off anyway when you see it for the first time. And you've got a lot of like teenager relationships, which is, I guess, a nice contrast to the other two parent child relationships in this superhero context. So yeah, I guess that's maybe why Dave falls a little bit flat in terms of the whole story kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I also thought even just there were certain things that just kind of stuck out to me as maybe not working so great. For example, the idea that Katie had this relationship with Russell, I just found almost unbelievable. Um,
Right. Yeah.
I just didn't really buy it. And, they never showed anything about that. They just were supposed to take that at face value, and I didn't.
Yeah. I
I,
literally forgot about that.
well, there's so much like the father, part that you mentioned, Martin. They actually added
Mm,
the role of the father for the film, and it really
right.
feels like it because what do
Yeah.
we see about the father? The father is stoic. He just wants to continue living and moving on, and I don't feel that any weight is placed on the mother's death, which is a horrible moment. Like, I mean, we don't have
Mm,
anything where we have Dave thinking about his mother or nothing. And with the other two, superheroes in this, Red Mist and Hit Girl, their parents are actively involved in their lives. And I think the fact that they didn't do something like that with Dave's father, and then of
mm,
course they focused on the relationship, which we already taled about, with Katie, which is a
Or his
mess,
friends, yeah.
and then also, I mean, he shows up in Katie's bedroom, and that's just supposed to be cool.
yeah.
Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot that's just kind of like out to lunch in terms of
Yeah.
logic.
Well, to your
If
point with the kick-ass father, Dave's father, the only kind of real moment we have with him is another kind of gay panic moment where, he's talking to him
Yeah.
in the hospital and is like,
Oh God, yeah.
afraid, that he got raped because he didn't have clothes on when they found him.
Ugh.
And it's just like, I don't know if that's
Mm.
super okay with me. I mean, it's pretty problematic,
Yeah, it's
to be
bad.
honest. And that comes back again with his friends. I kind of like the friends, probably just because I just always like Evan Peters all the time. So,
Yeah.
like, there's practically nothing he would do that would make me not think he was great.
Well, he does do
Um,
something in this, which makes me go, Jesus.
well, when he says he's in love with Hit Girl,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who cares? I
It's
mean,
just
fine.
like,
I mean, he's
He's
not
like
saying
11,
like
dude.
exactly.
but he's like,
That's the point.
he
I'm
says
like,
he'll wait for her. I think it's funny. Like,
all right. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know,
he's
man.
not saying like, he's just saying she's so cool. Like, he's blown
Yeah,
away. He's
yeah.
not saying he's like
He's
into the
very
child.
overwhelmed
Yeah.
by how cool she is.
It's, yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. The script, like, I mean, I think that if we had the stronger parent, and the one last point I want to make is, around the time that this came out, we still had The Sopranos, fresh in our minds. I mean, I don't know if it was still on, if it was wrapping up, but, I mean, Rispoli was actually in The Sopranos. And I mean, the relationship that we have with Frank and Red Mist, okay, that is like Tony Soprano and his kids. He always tried to separate business and home life. And we see that struggle. So, I mean, that adds a lot of depth there. But yeah, there's nothing with Dave and his dad. And yeah, his relationship with Katie.
Yeah, I just
I
didn't
think,
care that much.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they were just trying to riff on like the Spider-Man story where like one of his parents has to kind of die, to riff on that. And they definitely play it for a joke, but then there's no strong relationship. There's no father figure for Dave really. Again, it might be just because they don't want to like to distract it too much between Big Daddy and Hit Girl. So it's an interesting balancing act that they try and do. I think one of the disappointing things about the script for me is the backstory sequence about what happened to Damon's wife and why he's trying to kill Frank DeMarco. Like the 3D comic book animation was cool and different, but it just felt very random and dropped in for me. It didn't feel very organic at all. Like, it doesn't really try and create like a mystery around why Dave and Hit Girl, Big Daddy and Hit Girl are like taking out these drug dealers, and nor should they, because they would imagine that it's just a basic revenge thing. Hence, there's no mother figure around, so it feels like a tad tonally out of place that the scene ends up being a tad emotionally dramatic. For me, it's completely the opposite with how like Dave's mum dies and how it's presented. Completely done for humor, as we said. So a little bit frustrating for me, but so I just feel like they could have done it a little bit more organically. Had a few more scenes where they're talking about how her mother died, because I don't think you really know too much before that scene. So
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. I felt that it just felt like it was more of an excuse to use this technique, of the illustrations, to show that backstory, but it's not very value added to the story.
yeah,
It's very surface, and it just asks you to take a lot of things for granted rather than really, digging in. I think that, it's interesting because there are some emotional moments in this, but a lot of the times it's really skated over. And that was
yeah,
a really another pretty striking example of kind of
it felt
skating
very
over something that was
jarring.
emotional.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, we have like the animation, which, I wish was more integrated. Like you said, we get the idea that Big Daddy is drawing, this pyramid of bad guys that they need to take out. So you're like, okay. And then I'm like trying to make the jump. Okay, maybe Big Daddy wrote down, this story to show to Hit Girl to make it like a bedtime story because he's crazy enough that he would do this, right? So it's like I tried to go down that path. I don't know, because I haven't read the comic book. So, I mean, part of me almost feels like they needed a justification and that it wasn't there initially. And it was something that they added after the fact and they put that in, because they weren't going to be able to get Nick Cage back to shoot it or Chloe Grace Moretz, or they didn't have anyone cast as the wife. I mean, and the wife ODs because she's upset that her husband is in prison. So she committed suicide, which is tragic, terrible, heartbreaking. But I don't feel it is the direct result of someone else's wrongdoing.
Yeah, like she has to have a personal responsibility there as well.
Yeah.
That we're kind of just ignoring. And we're
Right.
saying, no, it's not. It doesn't matter.
It's like taking something that you're upset about, and then you're just like, I am going to focus all my rage on this because I'm upset about this, over here. It almost makes you think about like Memento in a way, right?
Well,
it's like you could never stop. You can never stop.
He needs someone to blame. He needs one focal point to pin it on.
Yeah.
It's something unattainable, so it can always keep going.
Yeah, so it felt kind of very basic, an idea that they would do like a backstory scene like that, where it was kind of fairly a given that it's a revenge story for these guys. Like, we're not stupid. There's no mum here, so surely she dies. And I would have just preferred like a simple kind of conversation between Big Daddy and Hit Girl, really. And even in that scene, like, you've got this cop that just turns up in their apartment, and you're like, who the hell is this guy?
Right.
Maybe you're supposed to feel like that a little bit, but it feels a tad jarring to me. And I feel like I kind of always go back to when you have like this backstory animation sequence is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, where for me that works really well because tonally and atmospherically it goes in from the live action to the animation really sweetly. I know it's all magic and stuff, but and you would kind of expect that to work well because it's all magic, but yeah, that's always one that does that kind of thing really well for me compared to this one, which I don't think works amazing. Carry on, John.
Okay, yeah. It's just one quick thing that I want to say about the Big Daddy Hit Girl story. It feels like they drew on Punisher. I feel like this is the Frank Castle story. And Frank Castle had a friend who was a cop. They have the Dolph Lundgren adaptation, which is older. Maybe not as many people have seen it now. And, there was a graphic novel of that as well. And we even have a scene at the end of that film where they go to the dojo, of the big gangster, and they have a showdown. So I feel like there is a major influence from Punisher in this. But, we've added, that the Punisher is actually a father, which is a huge departure from the comic book because everyone in his family was gone. And the Punisher, had a reason because the bad guys killed his family. So I feel like they took the Punisher backstory, but not enough. I feel like, it could have been a simple thing, these mobsters killed your mother. Boom. Like that's it. I went too far in a case. Mobsters killed your mom. We got it. You want to get them all.
Yeah.
It just was a little tweak is all it needed.
Yeah. They didn't just simplify. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how Matthew Vaughn plays with how we perceive these types of characters to create some quite surprising moments in this film, like especially with Mark Strong's character, Frank DeMarco, and his men. Like, because they seem pretty dumb Italian-American gangsters stereotypes, played for laughs. Frank assumes that Kick-Ass is the guy that's been killing his men, when we know he clearly isn't. Why would he assume that this skinny kid in a scuba costume would kill his men? It's a bit far-fetched. And a lot of the violent scenes we see are from Hitco and Big Daddy. So when the moment comes for Kick-Ass, Hitco, and Big Daddy, it should be a quite easy, fun task to watch them kick ass at the end. But no, with Kick-Ass providing the comedy aspect, to the final fight. So when Red Mist pretends to be Kick-Ass's friend and DeMarco's men capture Kick-Ass and Big Daddy, it's a situation you're not really expecting at all, but you still expect Hit Girl to save them. So when Big Daddy dies, it's quite a shock, because this whole time we've been laughing at the bad guys for the most part of this film. Plus, a lot of the brutality comes from DeMarco's men, which, again, you don't think they're capable of such strong violence. They're usually on the receiving end in this film from Hit Girl, especially. So I kind of love the fact that they kind of subvert those stereotypes as well, in that great scene where Nicolas Cage dies.
It is this juxtaposition of a cartoon, it's the humor, but it's like a cartoon that you laugh at, but then you realize that this cartoon has real claws. It really messes with your mind. And I do think that that's really good writing, because you are lulled into this sense of, oh, it's going to be fine. I mean, for me, when we see Kick-Ass just get like shattered, in the first two fights he goes out on, I am just like cringing on the couch.
Yeah.
Like, I've had a lot of injuries over the years.
How is this guy our hero?
Well, it was also just like this very heavy, visceral feeling of, oh my God. Now, I mean, you're talking to the guy that grew up watching Casino, guys' heads going to a vice, Goodfellas. We can go all down the line.
Yeah.
But, probably just because I'm older, but even I remember seeing this in the theater, and so we're going back like 14 years. And, I've still watched things that were harder. This movie, I feel like the violence in it, which I understand they toned down significantly for the film, really got me. Like, I felt every punch that the good guys took. And that, I mean, that's really good filmmaking, because if I'm affected that way, you're on to something.
Yeah, Mark Miller definitely loves his red ink in his comic books. Favorite lines? My God, there are a lot of great creative swearing in this.
Yeah,
sure,
for sure.
a
Pretty
lot
much.
Yeah.
Anytime Hit Girl says something profane, it's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's probably when she drops the C word that I just thought was the best part. And, they didn't have that because they really were trying to not have Chloe Grace Moretz say that. And I read that, they just kept having trouble getting that line to work. And her mother, who was there, on set, obviously, was just like, should just have her say cunts, it's fine. And so she did, and then she nailed it. So it's really
well, like, it's definitely a British filmmaker influence there for the British gangster films.
Yeah. No, you guys are much more willing to drop that off than we are over here.
Yeah. Only when I get very, very angry. I love the initial one from Dave, Kick-Ass near the start. Like, sure, a lot of what got me through the average school day was making deposits in the whack-off warehouse for later. He was actually pretty good. Good at getting his ass kicked. He should have called himself Ass Kicked.
That's a good
From
one.
Cage.
I like that guy says, what do you call yourself, the green condom?
Yeah, it's so good.
That's
Mark Strong is so good when he's getting pissed off with his corrupt cop friend, and he's like, outside of your jurisdiction, you're a fucking cop, and he's breaking the law. That's so inside your jurisdiction, it's ball deep in your jurisdiction's ass.
Anything with Mark Strong is a win, because, again, he's a great actor, and he carries a consistent accent with it. The performance is great, but there is an awareness, that he's not an Italian American man. He has it. Everybody has it, and it makes it so good and so funny. It brings this added layer to it, because once again, it's like he's doing so well and you want to laugh because you feel like it's a bunch of friends, out at the bar just doing impressions of each other. And this one's going all night, and you're like, oh my God, it's incredible. But again, Frank is also a killer, and that's the big that's the big thing. It's just brilliant performance. Mark
Yeah.
Strong, always the best,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is cool. Add to shopping cart.
I also like
It's a
when
great
that one
one.
guard guy's like, all right, fuck this, I'm getting the bazooka. And then you cut into like just Hit Girl's eye and she's like, bazooka? Like, what's going on here? That's a great line.
Yeah, I wrote that down as well. Yeah. I think my favorite line is, "Let me see, Trey. Hey, what's more likely, huh? That you're a greedy little cocksucker, or my coke was stolen by Superman? It's Batman. I never said Batman." I just felt that was very knowing joke. That he's got the superheroes mixed up.
That's good.
I love how they play on, the foolishness of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And also, I feel again, it's a joke about the foolishness of parents because, what does Red Mist do? He actually, Chris has this teddy bear, right? That's a video camera, and that gives them the information about Big Daddy and Hit Girl. And when he's setting this up, to screen the footage that's on there, they have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
They're like, what are you doing? And it's so much, just like a parent with new technology. And I think that's really great. That's really great. I mean, for me, my favorite part has to be this exchange with Dave and Hit Girl, where Dave says, how do I get a hold of you? And Hit Girl says, you just contact the mayor's office. He has a special signal he shines in the sky. It's in the shape of a giant cock. That one is by far my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so good. It's so good because it's like, again, she's a really good actor, and you feel like she's giving an honest answer, and then at the last minute she turns it, and it's absolutely brilliant. Oh,
yeah. Well,
so
I mean,
good.
and she's screwing with him and his kind of bullshit, like, thinking he learned everything from reading comic books.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like basically telling him, like, this is the real world, stop screwing around. And that continues to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, because later on she tells him, that he's the reason her dad died.
Yeah.
And she really sticks it to him with that.
Yeah, that's the real emotional punch that scene that works quite well there compared to some of the others. Screenplay score, guys, what are you going for?
I mean, it's funny because I felt like we were pretty critical, but we still gave it a pretty decent rating. So that just shows you that it's a really good movie. Because we still gave it a 7.4.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's really something because it comes around, and like you said, it does take the superhero genre and it flips it on its head. It gives us some good laughs. It cranks up the violence, which usually, the superhero movies makes it so that you can murder someone and it's fine. They're going to resurrect a second later. The hand's going to grow back. There's not a problem. And with this, you kind of have that blind expectation with the way the film is crafted.
Yeah.
And, we have that Marvel spirit in our hearts.
Yeah. And the things that it does well, it does really, really well.
Yes.
And,
absolutely.
that does make the things that it doesn't do as well kind of stick out a little bit more, I think. But overall, my criticisms of it are really pretty far outweighed by the things that it does do right.
Yeah, I think for me, I really love the script as well. Like, I love how daring it is in its dark humor. I'm a sucker for dark humor in that way. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Georgia. Like, there are some niggles here, like with Dave's relationship with Katie. It's a bit frustrating, but I can give that a little bit of a pass compared to how good the other relationships are in this, and how knowing it is as well. But also, when you think they're having loads of fun with the comic book genre, it it hits you with a ton of bricks. Like, yeah, no, we're still in the real world here. Like, there's blood flowing, and yeah, bones breaking. There's real kind of emotions working here as well, and it's not all superficial, like sometimes you see in some comic book films. So I will go like a 7.8 for me. Acting, then we've spoken a lot about the acting already, but which is fine.
It's all right. Actors are okay sometimes.
Yeah. I love Nicolas Cage, who plays Damien McCready, and I love Nicolas Cage, who plays Damien McCready, who plays Big Daddy. Let me start that again. I love how Nicolas Cage plays Damien McCready and Big Daddy differently. Like, as Damon, he's basically playing like a lovely father to his daughter. Like, he plays it like he wouldn't hurt a fly. Plus, he has this like stutter nature to the way he delivers his dialogue, sort of like Christopher Walken a little bit. I don't know if you noticed that or got that. Then when he's playing like Big Daddy, he's got his own version of Adam West's Batman. He's talking a lot faster as Big Daddy, and the way like he says, "Hit girl, back to the headquarters." when they're in like Dave's bedroom, I was like, that's pure Adam West right there. I mean, I watched a lot. Well, my dad made me watch a lot of like Adam West Batman when I was a kid. He always gives me stick of like, yep, that is still the best Batman, Martin. I'm like, is it though? I'm not sure. But yeah, I definitely noticed that from his acting. I was like, I kind of wanted a little bit of that to come through. That was the only real scene where I was just like, that's definitely Adam West for me.
Yeah, I think they were maybe a little bit nervous about him doing that maybe people weren't going to get it. We watched some behind the scenes stuff where it seemed like, that was mostly a Nicolas Cage choice to do. And, they ended up going with it, but it seemed like there was some trepidation that maybe it wouldn't come across, but it definitely did. And, Nicolas Cage is known for making like these really odd kind of choices, but a lot of times, like, it really works. Like, he's super smart about that. I'm not going to say it's perfect every time, but I think that, people don't give him quite enough credit for how much thinking he does about his characters. And it really works in this. And he does a great job, having distinctive kind of personalities for the two presentations of Damon McCready versus Big Daddy.
And I get the sense it looks kind of hard as well. That is not easy. I would imagine because like he's playing it for comedy. Like you've got to have two personalities to play for laughs, and usually it's the other way around. Like when you have a Batman character or a dual personality character, like both the characters have some edge to them, seriousness to them, but in very different ways in other films. Whereas this, with Damon, it's funny at times. That first scene where we've mentioned where he shoots his daughter in the chest. Yeah. Like he is kind of the straight guy there, and he's really funny, and and he's parodying Adam West as Big Daddy. So I can imagine that was quite a tricky challenge for Nick Cage, which he totally pulled off.
Yeah, and his chemistry with Chloe Grace Moretz is excellent as well. You always get his care for his daughter first. Like, no matter what else Nicolas Cage is doing, he's always conveying that he really loves this child. And all of his decisions are based around that, and whether he's Big Daddy or Damon. And I think that's really impressive. It's very compartmentalized acting choices, and I gotta hand it to him for that. It's very smart.
Well, there are two things that I want to mention. The Adam West, to us as the audience, is funny, but if we look at the
Mm.
reality of this character, perhaps he always idolized Batman, and that's why his suit was
Yeah.
so much like Batman. And he felt like, Adam West was the coolest. So when I do that, I'm going to do it just like Adam West. So I think that's a piece that
Mm.
we should consider. Of course, you want to disguise your voice. I mean, that's the deal across all Batmans. You want to disguise your voice. But I think with this, it's like a tribute. And Nicolas
Oh yeah.
Cage is a massive, comic book person.
Mm.
So I wanted to say that. And also, yes, I fully agree. Whether we're dealing with, Daddy McCready or Big Daddy Batman, it is the same thing. Being a father is the most important thing. And he is always looking out for her and always providing her with guidance, as he is literally dying in the chair. He is burning alive. He is giving Hit Girl the information that she needs to effectively kill every single person in the room.
Yeah.
And that shows his absolute dedication.
Yeah.
This is a person that literally lives for his daughter.
He's still protecting her and, trying to do his best from what he can do. Because, I mean, this guy's also, there's a mental disturbance here, but in his own way, he's really trying to protect Hit Girl.
Yep. And I mean, you can see, when she goes to school at the end, I mean, these two bullies try to take her lunch money, and she's just like, "Oh,
Knuckles
okay.
at the ready."
And she's gonna wipe the floor with them.
So her dad may be God, and she may be with this person who really, wants her to be more of a kid, but she still hasn't lost that. She's still going to be who she is, which is great.
She's always going to have the edge.
Yeah. I think you got a point there, though, John, with the fact that I think Nicolas Cage is drawing from like Adam West for his own like character of Damien McCready, because we don't have much context about why these guys dress up as superheroes, so you have to portray a lot of that through his acting, I think. With that, it's not just like a knowing joke for fans of Adam West's Batman. I think there's definitely his own. It's a character thing for his own character, if you know what I mean. Because we don't get a lot of why these guys dress up, and with Hit Girl, I would imagine she's just dressing up as Hit Girl because she wants to emulate her father. That's it, which is more than enough, I think, for those two. And also, when he is dying, you're right. Like, Nicolas Cage is amazing, and I do get quite emotional every time I watch this film, and when I watch his death scene, because of Nicolas Cage's performance. Yes, a lot to do with that is the music as well. The music is great, it's so good, brings a lot of that out of me. But just the way he's like shouting, kind of screeching, to tell Hit Girl the right moves or whatever. It's just really emotional, because throughout, McCready keeps his emotions to himself, especially around his daughter. But with this, because he's in so much pain, he's literally been burnt alive. So he's literally just shouting it like, I have to tell my daughter what to do to kill all these people. This is going to be my last act. I've got to do it right, and I'm going to give everything for my daughter in this moment to help her. So yeah, fantastic from Nicolas Cage.
It's just such a hard scene. It's like, I'm with you every time. It gets me. And I mean, the music in this, when you talk about that, I mean, the music is like this wonderful amalgamation of all of the comic book films we've seen up to that point. You can almost point out in the different swells of music, you're like, oh well, that kind of reminds me possibly of the Avengers, or it's like, I have this. And it's just like, there is so much emotion, in that main theme, that just will swell and come back down to the stark piano, that it really, really gets inside of you, and you can feel the film even more. It's like you have this performance in front of you, and then you have that music that just takes it to another place. This film is so visceral. That's what
Yeah.
I'd say is my biggest compliment. I feel
Mm.
everything. Like I said, you feel every punch. When people are dying, you're like, oh my God. It's really well done with that.
Yeah. I love Mark Strong in this. He feels like so dangerous at times and yet like really funny as well in a great way. Yes, the accent is a bit dodgy at times. I'm like, yeah, you sound completely British right now, but
That's
but
funny. It worked for me most of
yeah,
the time. I don't really remember a point where I was like, no.
yeah,
Aaron Taylor Johnson's American accent is good too. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, okay. Uh, but I love several moments where Mark Strong just looks angry and confused in like a tableau moment, like just like what?
Yeah.
In these shock moments when like they're hearing Hit Girl from behind the door kicking ass, and he just looks at his son just like completely in shock. Like that's just really funny to me. So good. And when they're watching like Hit Girl again on the from the teddy bear camera again, just the look on his face is just so funny. Favorite performance, guys? Who are you going for?
Gotta go.
I gotta go Hit Girl.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
Chloe Grace Moretz to be like 10 years old.
Unbelievable.
I, I, I would venture to say, in my opinion, this movie does not exist without her. She like trained with like circus to like learn how to do all this acrobatic work, so that it would really mostly be her. And she delivers these lines like somebody in their 20s, not somebody who's 10 years old. So I just think like I have to give it to her. And also she's holding her own with Nicolas Cage, who is, well established actor. And she's kind of driving the scenes with Aaron Taylor Johnson, like, and I mean that gives credit to him too. That he's playing kind of second banana to a 10-year-old girl in some ways.
Yeah.
But I just think she kind of makes the movie to me.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, that is it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an incredible performance, well beyond this person's years. It's just like, wow, this is a revelation.
Well, because she's still a little girl too.
Yeah.
Because you still have parts where, like when the guy pulls out the
Yeah.
butterfly knife. I have one of those too. Like she's so excited, So she's still a kid.
Flicks it a few more times than him.
Yeah.
I think I got to go with. I love Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's great, but got to go with Nicolas Cage for me. Just that dual performance, I think, is amazing. Yeah, I think he's great in this movie too. Acting score, guys, what are you going for?
I'm gonna pop it up a little bit from what we had written down. Now that we've talked about it a bit,
I'm with you
because
on that.
I think that the acting is actually pretty solid across all of our major players here. So
Yeah.
I think I would give it like an 8.2.
Okay, what was your original score?
We had 7.9, but I think it deserves at least an 8.
Yeah.
Just give it a little extra nudge.
Well, yeah, because again, it's just like the Chloe Grace Moretz and the Nicolas Cage heart of the film. And when you think about their scenes, you think about their work together and how much it means. And then again, we go down the line, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Mark Strong, Rispoli,
and Christopher Mintz-Plasse for the role he's playing.
Yeah.
Like really solid choice, great casting. So I think that's good. It's when we get into like this kind of middle group of people that things become less distinctive, and it could be just because there wasn't enough time to really bring those people out. But I think that's what contributes to maybe my original rating. But I think if we're really focusing on the weight that's brought by some of the major players, it brings it into the 8s for me.
Yeah, there's some real heavy
I think I'll go like a solid 8 for me. I think they're all like the main characters, all the main cast are amazing. I think some of the teenage characters, Dave's friends, apart from like Evan Peters, like they're okay. They're fine. Like the actress who plays Katie is a little irritating sometimes, but she's okay. But other than that, like everyone's on top form. So yeah, I think a solid 8 is fair. Right, let's add up the scores then for Kick-Ass.
What's going to happen?
I don't know. Probably going to be around an 8.
Addition fools John.
Yeah, me. I'm done. I can't do that.
No, I'm like
adding decimal points.
No.
Kick-Ass gets 48.9.
Wow.
All right.
This is not bad, not bad.
No.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us about what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Hit that like button and comment below. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Plus, check out our social media links for extra content on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off.